Hi everyone and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where we have just hit our first birthday.
Yay!
Yeah, I was going to insert music, but now Andy just beat me to it. There you go. We don't need that. Pro Tools Answers is a year and a bit old, and we thought we would mark the occasion, this very, very special occasion, by looking back on our last year together, all three of us together, and see what happened over that year. We're going to be discussing our favorite things that we've learned from each other. But, you know, that's one of the great things about this kind of thing, isn't it? That there's always something new to pick up from other people. It's why collaboration is so important. Right?
Absolutely.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. Certainly. So how about starting off by discussing where this whole thing came from in the first place?
Do it.
Just kind of looking back on that. So I've been adminning or modding, I suppose it is, the Avid the support forum, the Facebook support forum, since crikey, I think it might be something like 2012, and
wow.
it started with it was started by a friend of ours called Fahim, and I think I just joined it at one point, started contributing, and Fahim quickly asked me to become a moderator for the channel. I think we only had about maybe 1,500, 2,000 members at that point, and as it grew and grew and grew and grew, and Simon came on board, and Marco came on board, and I think it was the four of us for a significant amount of time. And then it was a few years ago that Avid took notice of what we were doing and asked if we could make our Facebook page the support site, the general support site for Avid's Pro Tools.
Wow, cool.
And so it became a little bit of a collaboration between us and Avid, and at that point Taupe got involved. So Taupe spends a lot of time answering lots of questions about licensing in the forum. That's his superpower. So that's why you'll find him in there. But yeah, it was started started typically as everything does. It starts from nothing, and it grew into what it is today. And I think can you see how many members we have on that group right now?
59.9 thousand.
So I'm definitely wrong. Okay, so it must be 50,000 that we had a kind of big thing for recently. So yeah, it's and that was since 2012. So it's pretty well supported. That says to us that there's at least 58,000 Pro Tools users out there, and just a few interlopers that are just there to troll. Possibly. I'm surmising. I don't really know.
What, on the internet?
And,
are you kidding? No.
Never. And in January of 2021, I sent a message out, an email out to what we have a list of all of the connected Pro Tools instructors, asking if anybody would want to collaborate on a YouTube channel that answers questions from that Pro Tools community in that specific group, for the purposes of giving accurate answers. You know, because you've seen some of the answers on the threads that, you know, the varying degrees of accuracy. And I think when we first started the YouTube channel, part of our intro was basically saying that we were going to be answering these questions because that there was a little bit of a varying degree of accuracy in the answers, and we wanted a very definitive way of answering people's questions, for one thing, but also those common questions that always come up, and then we just have a collection of videos that we can point people towards that give them accurate stuff, but then going a little bit further, because we love Pro Tools and we love what we do, and we've been able to see kind of alternative ways of being able to do things, and how some features or some ways of doing things will have effect on others. So we wanted to answer the questions, and then maybe just go that little bit further to answer them. And then we discovered Anders, who just goes on and on and on and on and on.
Oh my God!
And that's why the episodes are an hour long.
Yeah.
Because Anders is just too clever. It's too clever for us. We don't deserve him, Andy.
No, we certainly don't. We don't deserve
And
this.
yeah, so we've done a little bit of digging around, and we found my original email.
There you go.
So somebody could read out the original email. That
Well,
I
you
sent
should.
out
It's
to
you, the
guys
guy
to-
that wrote it, so it'd be in your own voice.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we could do that. So this morning we're dealing with a question from Dave on the some idiot on the DCI list. He says, "Morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope this topic is okay to send out via the list. I'm throwing around the idea of a PT-centric YouTube channel that discusses questions put forward in the Avid Facebook forum that I admin. I'm wondering if a couple of other experts would fancy being involved. It'll involve discussing a question, the wrong answers in the comments, and then concluding with the right answer. Hopefully it'll be fun and informative at the same time, and hopefully just a couple of hours a week maximum. Let me know if this heats your peak. Cheers, Dave." And apparently I was on my iPad at the time.
So, Dave, that's a great question. The solution is to trash your preferences.
I tried that, but it didn't work. Surprise! And we were then arguing about who replied first.
It turns out it was Andy.
I think it was me. But it, we both, because Anders and I both have apparently a very limited social life. We just, please, be our friend.
for maximum 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Andy evidently got in first. Anders got in second. I think I had a couple of other responses as well. But to be honest, you guys knew each other from before. I think some of the ACIs are able to hook up with each other at some of the Avid events. I've been to a couple, but I was getting emails from people that I was aware of, but I've never met personally. And who do you pick in that example? Because I guess it was up to me to make a decision as who I might collaborate with. And it's like, well, Andy's been cool on the list over the years, and I've never met Anders, but he sounds awesome. So let's just see what happens.
I think I was actually very active in the forum at that time as well, and that's why I jumped at the occasion. Now I have to say that I'm less active in the forum than I used to be.
Unless you get tagged.
Yeah.
And then you're right in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started talking at the beginning of January and figuring out what we were going to do. We started recording in January. We had a few episodes in hand. The plan was to have a few episodes in hand and then release, just in case we ended up not being able to record one week. And I think we've mostly been able to keep that up until recently, when we're recording, I think, a week behind now. I think there was a couple of weeks where we couldn't
But
do
we
it.
never skipped a week.
We've never skipped a release week. No, we have had weeks where we haven't been able to get together to do a recording. Right. But yeah,
but there are 52
consistent.
episodes out there, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And I think we've said it a few times over the year that it literally has been one of the most favorite things I've ever done.
No, this has been killer. It's the great thing about this. First of all, it's nice that this happened during COVID, because actually I'm in COVID jail right now. I'm infected, and my daughter is too. So I've been in this box for like the last, couple, like a week.
Buddy.
Oh yeah, I'm in COVID jail. I am unclean as far as my wife is concerned. But it's a different story. But it's actually it's been a great hour and change every week to get together with you guys and to really talk topics and dig deep and teach the way that I like to teach with people that I like to teach with. This has been great. Thank you, Dave, for starting this off.
No, thank you for agreeing to do it, and same thing with you, Anders. It really has been the best year.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I mean, it's been such a great year, and when you started and saying we have very small gaps in what our knowledge and stuff. That's simply not true. I'm learning every day. I'm learning something new. Like there's Pro Tools is there's so much to learn, and even though I know a fair deal of things, I'm constantly learning. Like every day I discover something new. Might not be a huge thing, but there are so many small little details and facets. So I'm picking up stuff every time, like from you and from Andy.
Yeah, and you know, it's an eclectic trio, and a kind of a little bit of a diverse trio in terms of our backgrounds, because you know I spend the majority of my time doing music. I've done a little bit with video, but it's mainly for band demos. Predominantly, so it's really light usage. But Anders, a majority of your time is spent doing post work, right? Music for post.
Yeah, music and post. Yeah, that's something that evolved over the years. I started in music like you. Like my background is music.
And where Andy's superpower lives is because you're constantly doing this day in, day out for Avid inside the walled castle that is Avid. You know, you're working on the curriculum stuff because you're Avid's curriculum manager. So you're devising the courses that we teach and engineers learn from. So and to be able to do that, you're constantly analyzing the software and ways of doing things to be able to teach in specific techniques, right, and specific workflows.
It's been a great gig. I mean, I've been working for Avid for the last since 2005. I've been working with Pro Tools for longer than that, as most of you guys have been, and it's interesting. When I started to teach Pro Tools as an Avid certified instructor, my skills went kerflooey, because it's the one thing, and this is something you find in the forums a lot, is that somebody does what they know how to do, and they've done it well, and they've refined what they know how to do. But if it's not what they know how to do, they don't know anything about it. And this is part of the reason why we even exist as teachers, is to kind of, you know, take that dark room that you're in and shine a flashlight around so you can see all the stuff around there that might help you out, but that you just don't know about because, you know, Pro Tools is deep waters.
Yeah, and I wasn't diminishing any of your history. I just wanted to kind of focus in on the fact that, you know, you spend a lot of time thinking about Pro Tools and the ways to do things because you're involved in the curriculum side of it.
Oh, yeah.
And that gives such an intrinsic knowledge of an incredibly deep application.
I marinated it all day long.
It's not a simple thing, is it? So, you know, when we're discussing these things, things are becoming, the answers can come very quick from you. And not always the easiest answers either, because you think probably in a much deeper way, I think, than Anders and I do. So we have some interesting discussions before our episodes are filmed as to how we're going to approach things. And I think we sometimes have to rein Andy back, don't we?
I think he reins himself back. He could just go overboard.
He can be too clever for us.
No, it's not me that goes into sample rate pull-up, pull-downs when we're supposed to be just talking about
me. That's all on me.
You know, but yeah, you're right. So I mean, we all come from different places, and you know what? I think also one of the things that's so fun about this, we all come from different backgrounds outside of Pro Tools. I mean, I'm an American living in Japan, so I've got two places covered. You know, you're a British person living in Britain. Anders, you're from
simple as it gets.
Now you're in Sweden, but you're from Austria.
No, the other way around. So I'm from Sweden, but I live in Austria.
There you go. So two places there too.
Yeah.
So Andy, you sent out a very interesting message to us. You sent us a list of functions that have been added into Pro Tools during this year that we've made Pro Tools Answers, and I was shocked. I was really shocked about a couple of things in there.
One, how much has been released in the last year?
Yeah.
But some key things.
You know, it's so interesting because, you know, a lot of people, some people, will complain that, you know, Pro Tools doesn't deliver, you know, any new features, that we just sit there stagnant, which is not true. It's just not. It is objectively not true. Other people will complain because we add stuff all the time, and so there's this kind of, you can't please everybody. You can please about 50% of the people.
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
So in that sense, we take the let's just go ahead and add some stuff. Let's see, folder tracks. Folder tracks, not here when we started Pro Tools Answers. Folder tracks, which has become the number. I don't think I've done a session since folder tracks came out that doesn't have folder tracks in it.
No, and I resisted folder tracks for a while, but it was after we discussed them. I think it was on one episode. I can't remember which one. I jumped right in there, and now everything is organized into folders. There's some interesting complex routing going on. I've got an input section built into Pro Tools, folded into folders. I've got a monitoring section that deals with the main monitoring and VSX monitoring coming from my Omni, built into an output section in folders. Oh, I love it.
How about this? In let's see, we started in the beginning of 2020, right? Or 2021?
2021. February was the first release.
Okay, so let's see what else, the new stuff.
We actually started recording in January, so we were still on 2020.12, I think.
The HDX hybrid engine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was massive. Wow.
Let's see what else. Carbon.
No,
yep.
Carbon came out or it was announced at least in December, I think, the year before we started, right?
Right.
Like a month before we started. Yep.
But there's a lot of stuff that was added to Pro Tools in the time that we've done our shtick.
Yeah, one of the early big ones was the VMK.
VMK, yeah, right. That virtual MIDI keyboard, which I've got a bunch of controllers, and I just needed to lay down some notes. I'm like, how am I? Yeah, of course, just Shift K, the greatest. It's the easiest keyboard. It was like, of all the keys that we've got that we use shortcuts for, we still had that one available for Japan.
Fantastic. By the way, that MIDI keyboard is more useful than you would ever think. I mean, I'm teaching a lot of courses online now during this pandemic, and some people simply don't have a MIDI keyboard at home, and they're taking like the 101, 110 class and stuff, and it's just Shift K, and you have the MIDI keyboard built in. I love that.
What I'm waiting for is somebody to build a velocity-sensitive computer keyboard. so that you could actually play this.
It would have uses for gaming, I guess.
Was dark mode built in when we started?
Dark mode was added.
Yes, but only the one mode where you have to turn. I mean, you had to quit Pro Tools to launch it, right?
Is it dark or is it bright?
Yeah,
exactly. So that was November of 2020. That's when dark mode came in.
Just came out. Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. On the just from your list, Andy, from the beginning of December of 2020, so this is just before we started, we got Catalina support.
Yep. Audio to MIDI. That came out in December.
And that came with an integration of Melodyne, right?
That's right. Yep. So if you have if you got Pro Tools, you install Melodyne Essentials, which is useful on its own, right? And it just makes this this feature of just dragging MIDI onto an audio track, and it just renders out, which is nuts.
No, but the other way around. You drag audio to a MIDI track, and it renders out as MIDI.
Do you know what?
Sorry,
what
you're
just
right.
Done is
I just went backwards. Yeah, you're right.
You're hitting on a very key thing as to why there was three of us here that I didn't mention.
Because we all drink a little bit too much before shows, so we catch each other on this stuff.
The point of asking to have another two people to collaborate on this thing was so that one, there's three experts discussing a question, but if any of us ever get anything wrong, and sometimes we miss things,
Sure,
right? Because you're talking and
You
you're
misspeak,
just
yep.
involved in the episode, and you sometimes misspeak, and we sometimes forget to correct each other. But that's the point of having the three of us on here, so that if anybody does misspeak or get some facts wrong or some workflow wrong, there's a little bit of there's a filter to correct each other with.
And it's all done in good humor. Isn't it, Anders?
Yes.
Always. With Melodyne, Andy, so Melodyne comes with Pro Tools. We can use that. It's still a standard version of Melodyne, right?
It's Melodyne Essentials, yeah.
Because I've got the normal version of Melodyne. I'd never really take much notice of the small one because I've got the bigger one.
Right.
So you can do what you would normally do with Melodyne Essentials.
Yeah.
It's
It's completely
vocal corrections.
completely useful. And the workflow's the same. It's just slightly scaled down.
Yeah.
And it does allow that audio to MIDI, which Anders, thank you for correcting me. Is you drag audio onto a MIDI track and then it will convert it.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome.
My point is that's a really incredible inclusion. You have versions of it in other doors. Logic's flex pitch is the one that immediately springs to mind, but it's not a particularly nice sounding algorithm, flex pitch, whereas Solemnity have really mastered it. The most recent version, Melodyne 5, just sounds incredible.
It is so impressive how transparent. I was playing a solo on one of my horns here, and the pitch was all over the road, and I'm like, I can't let this go out the door. I didn't want to auto tune it, but there were some notes that just were so far off I needed to fix, and I really doubted that it would be acceptable. And I moved that stuff, and you just drag the note into pitch, and it keeps the vibrato, it keeps all the stuff that you like about it, and you couldn't tell. You just couldn't tell that it was dragged. So they've got their algorithms down, and their direct node access DNA is just, it's nuts. It's so good. So it's a great third party to build into Pro Tools functionality.
It is.
So I'm just having a look at the list here. It was March when we could start doing a little bit more customization with the UI.
Yeah. Let's see.
As well.
Things that just had gotten launched, like in the year before we started, or just before we started, was like the adding of the complete plugin bundle for Pro Tools, which is a huge thing for if you're a subscriber and you get that plugin bundle, and you also get Heat as a subscriber. I think that's fantastic features.
So
Space has been my go-to reverb forever. I opened up an old session last night to teach some Beat Detective with, and I hadn't looked at it since 2012, and it opened up with a deactivated version of TL Space.
Oh wow.
That's how long ago it was. How long I've been using Space for, and that's always been my go-to reverb. It's an amazing reverb.
Yeah.
I'm in a minority there. I fell in love early and deep with Revibe. I've always been impressed with the fact that it has the detail on the front end of an impulse response, but it's rendering out its own tail, so it doesn't have that kind. It doesn't drop off. It really does kind of trail off nicely, and for some reason, I just keep on coming back to it. And the other thing too is how many folks still use Deverb all over the place.
I use it.
I mean, it's a lovely sounding verb.
It's not. I mean, it's. I go into I go all around the world. I do classes. I'm like, okay, so you John, what's your favorite reverb? The Revibe. I'm like, okay. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Well, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And
it does.
And everybody's going to be slightly different with what they like.
No. Dave, sorry, you were reading from the list and I interrupted.
Not necessarily. I'm just looking down it to see if there's some interesting things. We got the first M1 support release in June of last year. That was a significant one. I would argue it wasn't a massive amount of time between M1's release, the first M1 releases, which was it November of 2020 or November of 2019 that the first M1s were released.
I got my first M1 early February, just when we started recording our episodes, actually, and it was a fairly new computer at that time, so it might have been released like November 2019. We probably could check this.
So maybe I'm going to get flamed for that, because maybe it might be a little bit longer than I think. But that's just the result of the pandemic, I think. Time just seems to have no meaning anymore. But it could be 6 months. It could be 18 months.
It's totally not 18 months.
For M1 for an actual M1 supported release. So someone can correct us in the comments. It's fine. One of the things that I tend to find myself using quite often these days is changing the track width.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
Forever loading up the wrong track.
It's interesting. There, every once in a while, there will be a feature that comes out that is leading to another feature, right? So there's, so Elastic Audio, was leading to other things. Arguably, Beat Detective led to other things back in the day. What you're looking at with the track widths, you could see it coming. Because it first of all, you could filter the track widths. Now you can do all that. And very, very quietly, we started to allow plugins to be dragged from any track to any other track, and it just recalculates. So that there was some fundamental difference in how things are handled below the hood with regards to track widths. And we're not done yet, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
No, I think Avid are pretty good at refining their key features as time goes on. They're always criticised for taking a long time to do certain things, but I think I would surmise that there's a lot of QA that goes on behind closed doors.
And then there is also something else that I think is a huge factor. If you're only doing a software, you only have responsibilities for that software, right? But if you're like Avid, making interfaces, control surfaces, and you have a couple of programs that actually need to work with each other. It's like Media Composer and Pro Tools on the same machine at the same time, and that with HDX cards that are very, very complex, and HD hardware and all of that. Well, that's quite a lot more to research and develop drivers for than just like the software that you're developing, and you don't have to take responsibility for anything else but the software. So no drivers or anything for interfaces, but Avid constantly need to adapt all of their hardware as well, not only the software.
Yeah, and I would also argue that it's making sure that it's working for the significantly large facilities that
that's another thing.
A damaged Pro Tools system is going to be an Achilles heel, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is probably one of the toughest things that Avid has to deal with is because our client base is so broad, right? So everybody from the people who are making the movies that you listen, the guys in Skywalker Sound at the very top of the top, right? Those people have to have a workflow they can depend upon, and at the same time, the features that a person in their bedroom making beats or doing just getting started in whatever way, features that apply to them as well, and that's part of the reason why it's always so interesting when people go, why can't I ever customize my shortcuts? Right, everybody else, other DAWs, and maybe not all of them, but a lot of other DAWs allow that. You know who you don't hear that from? Professionals. The one thing they do not want is any chance of them walking into a room and having their shortcuts do the wrong things. And that's kind of like the fence that we kind of have to take care of both sides of when we're dealing with things. And we have to, obviously, as you said, our beta testing is pretty extensive. And if you ever take a look at that Pro Tools About link and you see all those scrolling names of people who are beta testers, they put Pro Tools through its paces. It's not a flippant thing. It's a very, very serious project. And who do we have here?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Alex.
How's it going?
It's awesome to see you. Thanks for dropping in. Friend of the show, Alex Brook.
Hello.
Hey.
Thought I'd come in and say hello. How are you guys? What's going on?
We're going through all the features that have been in Pro Tools for the last year that we've been on.
What's your? Oh, right. So,
So all
what
of
was
the
your?
things that Avid have introduced since we've been on the air, so to speak.
Right.
And the one that surprised us all the most is, of course, Folder Track. Folder
Which
Tracks,
came out
yeah.
just before we started, but it was a new feature,
Right. Oh, over the last year. New mini keyboard.
There you go.
Yep, keyboard.
That's good fun. Obviously, folder tracks were amazing. MIDI to audio. That's
that
good
was
fun.
still in there, right? So audio to MIDI, you mean?
Audio. Sorry, audio to MIDI. Sorry.
It must be. It must
The
be
other way.
It must be. It
a
must be
Japan
an English
thing.
or American person living in Japan thing.
Yes. Sorry.
Did that the wrong way round.
Same thing. Or it could possibly be that
So-
we're both idiots.
The wrong word in the sentence order I always put. Yes.
So Alex uses Pro Tools to edit the incredibly popular Japanese language learning podcast, Learn Japanese Pod. What a
That's it.
ridiculous way of describing such an awesome podcast. I apologize. I'm not very good at talking.
No,
You
that's
obviously
very good.
just intimidate me.
Not at all. Yeah. And man, is like Pro Tools. I can't imagine using any other DAW for editing hours and hours of my drivel speaking and also the guests on the show. Just the speed with which I can edit the dialogue. It's amazing. I love it. That's why
you posed a question to us a few months ago about could we use the field recorder?
Oh my god,
to
that was
speed up your
that was-
workflow.
Yeah, that was really jumping in the very, very deep end, way above my head. And then, you guys came up with this amazing, could I call it a hack of Pro Tools, where you're basically, it's like a field recorder workflow, right? Where you're conforming, edits on a mono audio track. You edit it and then conforming audio that you're bringing in to those edits, which is just like magic. It's just so incredible, that workflow, and that just completely changed everything. Go watch that episode again, people. It's amazing.
So you continued to use it?
Yes,
works
so
for
after we did the podcast and we went through that, I used it 2 more times, and again it was the same thing. The voice artist I was recording with, she recorded her side, but she also needs to record some extra audio, and it, because of reasons and life and things, it takes another week for her to get me that audio. And so in the meantime, I could just happily edit away my good quality audio and then the terrible Skype audio, and edit everything up. And then she sends me her file. I put it in Pro Tools, and like magic, it lines up. And there's, just a couple of places here and there I just have to kind of nudge some stuff, but other than that, it's just such a great workflow. Otherwise I have to wait a week, and then I wait later and I have to do the edits a week later, which just wastes a lot of time. So fantastic. It's like magic. I love it.
And that so we applaud your commitment to Skype. You must still be the only one.
I don't know why we were using Skype. It was just because the voice actor, she was using Skype. There was this hilarious thing on YouTube where they had this comedian like pretending to be the CEO of Skype, and the pandemic hits, And he goes, "Why did you move to Zoom? You were using you used to love us."
How's your Napster account doing? Still working with that?
So they say the Napster's going to be big one of these days.
Yep,
oh
completely.
my gosh, Napster.
By the way, the episode that if you're interested in using a field recorder workflow for purposes that it was not intended to, so I guess in that sense it's a hack. It is episode 37.
So 37, that was a life changer for me. So thank you again, gentlemen. That was just such an amazing workaround, hack, workflow. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, and I use it today, so it's good. So thank you.
Very welcome. Our pleasure. So
but it would be really interesting to hear, like, what have people learned from our from Pro Tools Answers? Like, what have you, the viewer, learned from us that you keep using? It could be something that has changed your entire workflow, or it could be just a simple little shortcut or anything. It would be really interesting to know.
Yep.
Well, do you know what I think would also be quite interesting is what are the favourite things that we've learned from each other over
nice
the
one.
year? So has anyone got any chinks in the armour of things that you've picked up from me?
Sure.
God forbid, or Andy.
Should I start that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So Dave, I mean, from you, I've learned so much about I/O setup. So I/O setup is one of those places where you simply, there is so much that you can do, and there are so many little fine details, and you have a very, very structured approach to the I/O setups. So every time you talk about I/O setup, I just sit and listen, because I know there will be like a little sugar cube somewhere, like hidden away in there. Like one of the things that you mentioned that I had no clue about was using a dash in the name.
That's
between
brilliant,
numbers.
wasn't it?
With the numbers.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great feature.
So good.
But it's your structure of everything there. I totally always try to pick up stuff from you there. Thank you, Dave.
I picked up something from Dave just a couple episodes ago when we were talking about using key switches for virtual instruments. How can you not love this show? This is a show where we talk about how to use key switches for virtual instruments. Forget it. Just stop it.
But we go where nobody else would dare.
Where nobody, I guess, cares to go. But I was doing it one way, and as I was doing it, I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. And I'll be darned if Dave didn't have that better way of doing it, of just having the key switch notes in clips and just drag them onto another track. So well done. Anders, I learned something from you almost in the first show, because everybody knows the shortcut to get back to the beginning of the timeline, right? So returns to the beginning of the timeline. But if you hold down the control key, it goes to the beginning of a song. It goes to your song start position and not the beginning of the timeline. And if I ever knew that, I had forgotten it. And I'm like, and now I use that all the time, because very rarely do I have my song start be at the beginning of my timeline, because I want to have a little bit of a buffer there. Now it makes all the sense in the world. It's perfect.
The big one for me from Anders was using a basic folder track as a trash bin, because that realization that whenever you delete a track in Pro Tools, it erases the undo history.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than deleting a track, just deactivate it and stick it in the Pro Tools trash, our new Pro Tools trash bin.
You don't even have to deactivate it. If your folder track is inactive, then when you drag the track into the folder track, it goes inactive. And when you drag it out, it activates again. Forget about it. It's the greatest thing in the world.
That's a great one.
It was so good. And that's now a standard part of all of my sessions.
Yeah, from Andy, one thing that I picked up that I didn't know about was the single note height Midi track. I love that one. it's so useful for like creating like a matrix drum machine and stuff like that. So much fun. But honestly, there are so many little things that I've learned over this year. A lot of shortcuts, a lot of little small tips and tricks here and there, and like just it's been a great year.
It has been. So, Alex, aside from using field recorders for purposes other than what God intended them, what have you picked up anything from Pro Tools Answers?
So this is going to be kind of a boring answer. I'm currently actually looking at your YouTube video page with all your videos listed in order, and all of them, basically. I haven't got up to the high echelons of, the understanding, the kind of the deep understanding that you guys have of Pro Tools. But just about every single, I don't think there's a single video where I didn't learn something new. Some of the stuff I liked was stuff on Midi. And some of the really basic questions that you think are simple, but actually you can go really deep in. So I'm actually looking at some of the earlier episodes. So for example, why can't I copy MIDI automation to audio tracks? It's a great question. It's not something that's intuitively obvious, right? And there's a reason why you can't do it, right? Can I have a different click track for each section was another one. And then other ones, when you were going over heat, that was another, not MIDI, but heat is just absolutely fantastic. That's something I like. The beat detective one was really good. And everything, basically.
And everything else.
And everything else. But all of them have been like really good. And I love the way that, the long form of your conversations mean you can really go into real kind of detail. And actually the way you guys sometimes go off track, going off track is you're just learning more stuff, so I love it. So
I don't think you're correct.
Not to cast aspersions on anyone in particular, Andy.
I don't think we do that.
Never happened.
And the other one interesting. How can I open a Cubase project in Pro Tools? Is like super interesting.
One of the new ones, yeah.
Yeah. So all of them have been like really good. All of them are really good, yeah. So, and by the way, as a viewer, let me congratulate you on. Yeah, can't believe a year has gone by already. It's a fantastic achievement. Well done, Jim.
I only feel 3 years older than when we started.
Yeah, it felt like 5 years making it, right?
I wanted to mention one thing that I picked up from Andy, because I didn't get an opportunity to say what I picked up from Andy. My favorite thing, and it's affected me deeply, is what the MP3 encoder does.
Oh yeah,
the discussion on MP3s, bouncing to MP3s, seeing all of that stuff.
I learned so much that episode as well. Thank you, Andy.
I actually feel hostile towards MP3 files. I just don't like them personally. It
came across.
Oh yeah, completely. It's so interesting because the whole lossless CD quality. There's a lot of words that we throw out when we're talking about encoding formats. But anytime you encode into something like that, lossy or lossless, there are going to be things that other people don't care about that we do. Right, like for example, if you put a couple of milliseconds of silence at the beginning and the end of a file, who cares about that? Nobody, except for every single person that uses a DAW, because that's where all that's when your problems with lining up and phase and all that stuff comes in. But yeah, I've had people send me MP3 files and it's always been a problem.
Yeah, more people need to know why MP3s are awful.
Are morally bad. I'm gonna get flamed on that for some strange reason. I'm gonna get Fraunhofer's gonna send me a strongly worded letter.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I mean,
we did like your
MP3s
format back in the day, but not anymore.
But MP3s totally have their use, right?
Oh, completely.
I mean,
no, they completely do.
You could totally use them, but don't use them in your DAW.
No, I make MP3 files as a general rule whenever I'm bouncing. When you're sending an evaluation mix to somebody,
add MP3,
absolutely, yeah, completely, all the time. But you don't use it for production. Unless there's something wrong with your other files, or as only as a recovery mechanism.
See, I tend to not even use MP3 for that anymore. I've got Dropbox, I've got Google Drive, OneDrive. There's so many ways to send a 50 megabyte 1644 WAV file.
Fair enough.
Why even strip out 90% of it just to give somebody an evaluation?
I think Spotify has a few open spaces, so you could put some stuff up there for them.
They should have a lot more open spaces. So,
yeah. So, what's up next? What about next year?
What's
you mean
coming
this
up
year?
Next year?
Yeah, or like the second year of Protos Answers. You have to stay tuned to find out.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bad one.
I think we should simplify our show. I'll be honest with you. I think we should simplify our show to only address questions that can be fixed by trashing the preferences.
Yeah, but that's everything. Well,
Pro Tools.
For those who don't get the joke, we've been joking about this since probably episode 2 or something. It's like an answer that usually comes up whenever someone has a Pro Tools problem. There is always someone saying trash your preferences as a universal solution, which is probably not the right thing to do.
Usually not the way to go.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then you'll spend the next 3 weeks reconstituting your preferences because Pro Tools doesn't act the way that you expect it to.
And it's very seldom the solution, actually.
It's very seldom the solution. It not only does it trash the preferences, but it also trashes your peripherals. So if you're dealing with a post-production situation, then all that stuff goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We make fun of it for a reason.
It's
making a point, isn't it? It's making a point.
But has that slowly gone down, like the comments about trashing preferences, or is it still the same in forum?
Probably not, because there are 56,000 users on the forum, and we only have about 1,800 subscribers. So there's a big discrepancy between people that are commenting and people that now know that trashing the preferences is a big joke. So we could really do with getting that number up, guys. I think we're about an hour in now. If you've stuck with us,
where we need to.
If you've stuck with us for this long, please share our videos around. We would definitely like a few more subscribers and a few more viewers.
But it's been a great ride. I look forward to continuing this.
Yeah. So I think we could probably close down now. I think an hour is a decent amount of time
to talk about nothing. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been fun to reminisce about it. We do have to discuss how Pro Tools Answers is going to be continuing next year. Anders' question was a significant one, or point rather was a significant one. But we haven't quite nailed that down yet, have we?
No, we're still open to suggestions. If you have anything that you would like to see or hear about, or the format, please let us know.
Yeah, indeed, and specifically from our Patreon members, and if anyone who's considering becoming a Patreon to the channel as well, we want to be able to reward you guys for supporting us and giving you some specific content for doing so. When we were putting together our Patreon tiers, crikey, 9-10 months ago, we went in with it with the best of intentions. But I think the reality is that we're just the three incredibly busy people. You know, Andy works full time for Avid. Anders works full time with his studio. I work full time with the band stuff and the tour management stuff and the teaching stuff and the production stuff. I think I've got a few other things going on than you guys may have done. So it keeps us incredibly busy. It's just all my point. And I don't think we've been able to keep up the commitment that we wanted to initially. So we want to, address that really and make sure that the Patreons are receive what they deserve.
Yeah,
is basically what I think we want to say, and give
Absolutely.
them good value for their support. So if you have comments about what you would like specifically as a Patreon member, we'd love to receive that, because we're still kind of just refining how we want to change up Pro Tools Answers. Obviously keeping things good for those of you who are just dropping in and consuming the content casually. And we're going to be continuing to answer questions, because that's the point. It's all about responding to people's queries and how does Pro Tools work and how do we do this and how do we do that. But what we add into it is how can we take those questions further and elaborate on a lot of the subjects, to give people a lot more awareness of how this app works, because it's big and it's complicated and it's scary.
Don't be scared. We'll demystify it for you.
Yes. So comments about how you think Pro Tools Answers should develop for the casual user and also for the Patreons. The comments would be graciously appreciated. So shall we wrap that up?
Let's do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex, for dropping in.
Woo-hoo.
Thanks for having me. And,
friend of the show, staunch supporter. You're not wearing your gang colours though.
Next time. I'm showing up the team.
Yeah, obviously you're longtime buddy of Andy's. Andy introduced you to the show. Andy introduced you to us. Andy introduced you and brought you to me, and I'm so grateful for that.
And it's been awesome getting to know you guys. I heard good things from Andy, and then actually got to meet you, and I found out that Andy wasn't lying. It was true.
That's
and
right.
So it's been wonderful getting to know you guys, and all the cool stuff learning from your videos. If anything, I need to kind of go through them again to kind of remember what I saw almost a year ago now. So thank you so much for everything you do, and I feel slightly less intimidated by Pro Tools a year later. So I think you're doing your jobs well. So thanks a lot for everything you do, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much to Anders,
Thank you.
the legend that is Mr. Anders Motz, and the man with all the swagger, according to the comments, Andy Hageman.
You bet.
Thank you guys for a magnificent year. It's been awesome. It's been so much fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you to all of you guys for joining us. And we will see you at the next one. My name's Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers, and we're out.